Hi guys, in this tutorial I would like to talk about the surface shader. The surface shader is the most basic shader to shade surface. It's a newer shader since 2012. It's a PBR shader roughness metaness in that, and right now we are more using the Surface2 since Guerilla 2. It's an improvement shader from the Surface 1, which is a legacy. So right now we're most of the time when I'm gonna say surface shader is gonna be Surface 2 that I'm gonna manipulate. The surface shader respect a couple of rules, and the most important a couple of rules about energy conservation. The biggest one and the most important one, it's we need to understand shader as a box, and we know what input energy or light or let's say energy that we input into the box, and we need to know also what we output. And most of the time, and that's a basic case of every shader, the output is going to be equal or less than the input. In fact, that's impossible. That in the real life, it's impossible to be the equal amount between input and output because there is absorption. That's the case if you're wearing a black shirt in summer. You know that the black shirt is black because it's absorbing the light, and it's turning this absorption into heat. That's why you get super warm with a black t-shirt. But we're not going to talk about physics stuff. Just to get the basic concept that energy conservation means it's not going to be more than what they input. In fact, real physics said that's impossible. It's always less. So shading with a black, with a pure white or pure black color doesn't really exist in real life. Anyway, we can do cartoons, so we can play with that. That is not a rule. There is no infraction. You can break the rules. It's also a layer shader, and we're gonna dive into that. So first of all, I go back to my generalities scene that I used in the previous tutorial, and I'm gonna create a surface shader. I'm gonna render. That's it. So this shader is shading my objects, and I'm gonna have fun with the sliders, but I'm gonna put apart the two top one, dirt and specular 2, because in my concept of the material is not gonna respecting some stuff. So we're gonna start with the metal one. Metal slider is gonna drive the amount of metal into your object, but reality said that in fact physically your object can be only a metal or a dielectric. It can be something between the two of them. So that's something that physically doesn't really exist, but that's something that we can use for creating car paint, because if you're in car paint, it's a mix between a tiny part of metal and paint. So that's not something that we can create painting points. So we're gonna make some kind of mix if we wanna create car paint. So metal say that metal sliders, it's driving the amount of metal into the surface. After that, we got the specular slider. We create specularity. That's the white point that you got right there. I'm gonna low back my diffuse color and say, okay, it's gonna be more visible. That spot. Why? Oh, by the way, why it's super dark? Because I've got no environment, and metal are per reflection, so that's why I've got this super black, because my environment is black. I've got a velvet slider with driving the velvet effect. You can sometimes call that kind of it's not exactly a sheen, but it's really close for a machine if you already know these settings, and that's giving you the this aspect. We got the glass, who is turning into a pure transmission object. So as I've got no environment, that's why I've got only one tiny point of the light with that we can see through the glass, but that's why it's super dark. There is nothing. Oh, that's very easy. And last but not least, my subsurface parameters with turning the surface into subsurface for getting transmission, not pure transmission, with a scatter into it. Okay, we can drive these settings with maps. How I can know that is because every time I've got a slider with a hem, that means that it can be drove by a map. I'm gonna use the sample map from Guerilla, just right there, and I'm gonna play with it. For getting something that we be able to notice, I'm gonna pick the sprite texture, just right there, the sprite one. And I'm gonna play with it. So I'm gonna drag and drop it into my middle input. We're gonna keep it into an absolute pass. Guerilla is gonna compute the map, and that's it. That's why I've got the one that I can notice. So I'm gonna turn the camera up. That's it. I've got my one, and as you can see, under my one, which is my middle right there, I've got my diffuse color. I'm gonna turn something with the color to be sure that we can notice that. So everywhere I've got the white part of my middle, I've got the middle effect, and otherwise I've got the regular diffuse, the dielectric effect underneath. Meaning that the Guerilla shader is a layer shader, so you have to and you need to layer your object, and that's a really powerful way of getting one shader to drive all the aspect of a material. There is a the layer are that's a stack of layers are stacked together, and there is some priority, meaning that some of them can be combined, and some of them can be not, and that's based because that's the physical way of handling this kind of aspect of this kind of yeah, the aspect of the material. So I'm still not gonna talk upper this line. Oh yeah, of course, I'm gonna go for the simple one, the simplest one, that's the opacity input. So I'm gonna remove this shader. I'm gonna create a new one, super simple one. Okay, I'm gonna connect it, and I'm gonna go for my opacity input, which is at the bottom of my shader. I'm gonna drag and drop my one. Okay, still, and as you will see, I've got an entrance into my shader respecting the one map. Sorry guys, I messed up. So here comes the map. Let's say that we're not, remember my choice. Okay, so right now we got an input, so where it's one, the opacity is through, and when it's black, the opacity is for transparency. So that's not something that we use that much, because in reality it doesn't really exist. If you want to use like a cookie cutter and do all into the object, that's not the case. That's most of the time we want a more sometimes it's confusing between opacity and glass and transmission. So most of the time we want to use glass effect. So second one is the incandescence. Incandescence is it's the addition of more energy that you wanna add into your shader. Meaning that let's say I've got a black object, kind of super black, and wanna give him an effect of that's like it's an LCD screen. So I can use this to giving a color. So I'll drag and drop the one, and as you can see, it's gonna increase the light effect of the object. But as my map is not that powerful, it's not gonna give me this super lighty effect. So I'm gonna change for something with a color into it, and say like that. And also, as you can notice, the incandescence is not affecting by the color of by the lighting of my scene. As you can see, it's turning of a flat effect, because as my light is not super powerful, that's why I still got a little bit of my diffuse beyond that, but I can go for something more, and as you can see, it's mixing between the two of them and kind of giving us the incandescence effect of the shader. I'm going back to my middle element. As you can see, I've got the priority that said that your object can be metal or dielectric, and dielectric does a stack of element I've got right there. So you can get metal and diffuse, you can get metal and velvet, you can get metal and specular, because metal are pure specular. So that means that this part is not physically correct for any metal. It's pure reflection. Metal slider right there. Up, got it. Pure metal, sorry. Okay, so this is a pure metal. We are gonna jump to the specifically input of the metal. So first of all, I can drive my roughness. Okay, let's have fun. So let's have something super gloss, or something super rough, and it can turn super rough. I can also change the color of my metal, meaning I can turning something like, let's say, I want to do that. Okay, turning to be like a metal paint with something. It's not totally accurate about the specific color. Watch out for you guys, because metal are really specific color, and the best way to work with is to use a chart. Speaking of chart, we got profile, we are charted, color. Like if you want to get a perfect gold effect, you can use one of the gold profile. You can have fun with between the different measure from specific case. And as you can see, I've got the Copper Johnson, which is this one. So I can play with that with if I want to get a specific profile metal. And of course, I've got anisotropy, meaning that the specularity is not gonna turn into isotropic way. As you can see, this one, it's super crappy with my low level of subdivision. So we're gonna add a couple of subdiv right there. Okay. Perfect. So as you can see, it's turning to be anisotropic. Doesn't meaning that's the opposite of isotropic. That means that it sends the rays into all the way the same way, and a dot is gonna keeping its round shape, or a circle is gonna keep it its round shape. In this case, it's gonna stop to be round, and it's gonna to be spread around the surface. So if I go in the direction of 0, it's gonna turn to be horizontal, and if I got upper close to 1, it's gonna turn to be vertical ones. Okay. Metal effect got like every specular layer in Guerilla got so roughness, anisotropy, and you got also iridescence, meaning that giving you the iridescence effect. Iridescence effect, it's the fact that the light is bouncing between the layer of specularity. You can drive this the amount of wave that you want to get into the iridescence wave. Like I've got only one with shade around my sphere, but if I want to get two, I can have that. And recently I just discovered, and thank you to people from Discord, that I can drive that with a cloud, getting something super weird. And let's say that we're gonna add some octaves. And it's starting to be super funky. So as you will notice later, every specular layer, like the specular 1 or the specular 2, got this roughness, anisotropy, color, and iridescence and iridescence wave. Okay, so an object can be a metal or is not a metal, but there is not between the two of them. I'm gonna use a map, a simpler map, which is gonna be a stripe. And my object is gonna be turned into a metal in the right part and into dielectric into the left part. I'm gonna remove my light set, my super simple light rig, and I'm gonna create a skylight. And it will give you the, as you can notice, the environment into my metal part. I'm gonna go back into my diffuse part, and you will notice that it's decorated from the metal elements. Diffuse, it's the basic color of the shader. I'm not gonna dive into the complex part of what is diffuse and why diffuse is diffuse. The only thing to understand it's diffuse is a reflection with omnidirectional. That's why it's super uniform and is diffuse. That's meaning. I'm gonna just create a little color. Okay, so as you can see, changing the color of the diffuse is not affecting the color of my metal, and I still can keep my metal into gold. Okay, so the two are separate. And I'm gonna turn my specular slider into 1, and as you can see, I've got my specularity with hitting the surface, and I'm gonna have fun with the specularity. So most of the time I'm gonna play only with the roughness of the specularity, because the model shader is based to get 1 into specular. If you want to play with the amount of specularity, you have to play with the tweaking the slider of a IOR. What is IOR? I'm not gonna dive also into that. It's the indexes of refraction. It's a physical way of driving the amount of reflection and refraction into my object. As you can see, if I go for a super, if I go to 1, I've got no more reflection, and if I go to value of 2, I can get a super heavy reflection. I'm gonna show you the energy conservation of the shader. So I'm gonna keep a beauty AOV. I'm gonna create a second one, which is gonna be my diffuse AOV, and I'm gonna get my specular AOV. Specular right here. Sorry guys, here. I'm gonna save my scene into my shading basics. I'm gonna render this image. I'm gonna remove the IPR. Well, this is kind of super high settings of rendering, so we're gonna keep it low to get something super fast. So okay, a couple of seconds. I'm gonna push my image into my buffer, and I can compare the two of them. So left side it's my render view, and right side it's what I get into the buffer. So as you can see right now, I've got no differences. I'm gonna change the amount of IOR for something kind of super high. I know it's not gonna be plausible for a dielectric, but we're gonna see what we got. So first comparison that we can have a look, it's more shiny. So what I need to understand, it's the IOR is gonna drive my shininess effect of my dielectric. Secondly, I'm gonna compare with my specularity, and as you can see, at the right level I've got an IOR 1.5, at the left level I've got an IOR 2.5, and it's more shiny, I've got more reflection. But if my lighting is not changing, meaning that my input energy is the same, and if I've got more into my specularity, that means that I've got less into the diffuse. And you can notice that in the right part, which my IOR it's less, my diffuse is subtly more clear than more in the light than my left one. Meaning that energy conservation, it's meaning is if some of the energy are always a constant. And you got more reflection, that means that you take from a part and give it to another one. So I've got more light into my specular and less into my diffuse. That's kind of good test to know if your shader is energy conservative, meaning that if you increase your RR, you get to you will get more reflection and less diffuse. And if I go for something like 1 pure, it's way more. Let's make the difference between, at the right side I've got the 2.5 RR, in the left side I've got the 1 RR. As you can see, I've got less specularity. In fact, I've got no specularity. That's only my diffuse reflection. And if I go to my specularity, I can see that I've got pretty close from nothing, only the small dot there. And if I go to my diffuse, you can see that I've got something that's darker in where my IOR is more powerful.